So in our previous exercise, we wrote a script that will compute the diameter of a shaft for us, assuming that there is a turning moment and a torsional shear on the shaft, just these conditions. So we designed for a solid shaft and a hollow shaft, and we wrote a MATLAB script. Now with that same problem, we want to create a user interface in MATLAB that will do the exact same thing. So let's head over to MATLAB and do that. Mind you, we are going to use the same equations. So if you haven't seen that previous video, you can maybe I'll leave a description in the link or something. Yeah, perhaps you can just follow along with this one. Okay, so the previous video is not a prerequisite for this though. Okay, so let's go to MATLAB and then let's open our app designer. Okay, so what do I need? Say I'll need a label. Let me get some label here, and then let's call this shaft design for torsion. Okay, shaft design for torsion. All right. Let me increase the font. I don't know, 18. Yeah. And then I'll include a background color. I'll make this, make it central, and then okay, so this is what I have. Actually, I don't think I will need all of that. Make this even smaller. So let me make that smaller, like that. Okay, like so. Make it smaller. Okay, and then I'm going to use a switch like this. Just drag it on here. I'll use this to determine whether or not I want a hollow shaft or a solid shaft. I will select that and then move it downwards. I want the label to be on top. So okay, now double click on that switch there. I want to call it hollow. So hollow shaft, and then I won't say hollow shaft is off. I will double click on this, and then in here, instead of on, I would say yes and no. Okay, like that. Okay, so that is what I'll use. And then for in the component browser, app.switch, that's fine. I'll leave it at that. App.switch is fine. Okay, so per our formula, we need to have some kind of a input field. So here we are calling it edit field. So we are going to use the numeric edit fields. So let me get this first one, numeric edit field. Okay, and then I'll get another one. So I need one for the torque, another for the torsional shear, and then in case of the in the case of the hollow shaft, I need a last one for K, and K is the ratio of the inner diameter to the outer diameter. So here, the very first one, I have torque. Torque is in Newton meter, if I'm not mistaken. and then here I have torsional shear. So this is torsional shear, but I'll just leave it as shear. Okay, I am assuming that you know what I am referring to, and this is to be Newton per squared meters, but I don't know where to get the superscript, so I'll just leave it at this. Okay, don't know where to get that. All right. Okay, so in here, what do I need to have? Torsional shear, but I'll just use shear, and then Newton per squared meters. Okay, and then finally I have my K. Okay, so this is what I have, and then I will need a button like that. I'll need a button. Now this button I'll call calculate, and then I would need a what will I need? I'll need a test area. Okay, need a test area. Let me call this my output. Okay, now I want to change some of these. So for the output, instead of app dot test area, I would say dot output, and then for the button, this one, I'll call it app dot calculate. Make sure you are using the right capitalization, because this work here is case sensitive. So dot K, this K is big K, capital K. Now here I have dot shear, and then finally for this I have the torque. For the switch, I'll leave it as switch, it's fine. And then I would go for a label like this. I'm using this just for aesthetic purposes, so I'll type in here nothing. Okay, so I'll do that, and then change the background color here to that. Okay, that is just for aesthetic purposes. Okay, hope we are okay. I think we are. Okay, so this will be it for the design. Now we will head on over to we are in a design view. So we have the design view, we have the code view. Let's head on over to code view, right? And then once we are in code view, this is what we have. Okay, now everything here you don't need to touch, leave it as is. And then now let's think through some stuff. Now when this one hollow shaft, when it says no, it means we don't need the K, because per our formula, right, when we are designing a solid shaft we need the K, but when we are designing the solid shaft we don't need any K. But when we design the hollow shaft, that is when we require K. Okay, so we are going to write a code such that So we are going to write a code to that effect. So we'll write some code under this switch, okay? And what we want to say is if the value here is no, then we want this k, this edit field here, to disappear. But if the value here is yes, that means we want to design a hollow shaft, then we want this k edit field to be available to us. So let's go to code view. Okay, and then in code view, let's click on the switch to select it. Okay, so we can either click here or we can click there, either one of the two. And then we have to add a callback. So we click on callback, and then you just say okay here. All right, we don't need to touch anything there. Now the value of the switch is stored in this parameter for us already. So as it stands, the value of the switch will be no. Okay, because we have no, the switch is turned to no. Okay, so its current value is no. So what we are going to say is if the value of the switch is equal to no, then we want something to happen. What do we want to happen? We want this app.k, this edit field, this app.k, right? This one here, this app.k, we want it to become invincible. So we can say app.k, okay? Mind you, capital K. And then the property which controls the visibility of the edit field is visible. Okay, so when I set this to off, when I set this property to off, then this app.k, this one here, will disappear, right? Will disappear if the switch is turned off. That means we are not designing a hollow shaft. Okay, so that is the way to go about it. Now, instead of writing the code like this, if you want to compare two strings, because the value of app.switch.value is no or yes, which is a string. Okay, so basically we are comparing one string to another string. If you want to do that, the better way to do it in MATLAB is to use an inbuilt function called string compare, okay, or string comparison. So we will compare the first value, or we will compare value, right, which is this one right here, this one right here, right, this value. We will compare it to what? We will compare it to no. Okay, no. So if we compare these two and they are the same, it means that the switch is turned what? The switch is turned off. And when the switch is off, what that means is that I don't want to design what? I don't want to design a hollow shaft. In that case, I don't need app.k to be visible. Okay, so that's the logic. Now, the reverse is that if the switch is rather turned what? If the switch is rather turned on, that means I want to design the hollow shaft. In that case, then I want app.k to be what? To be visible. So I'll turn it on. So that is what I'll do. So this is what I need. So before we run, let's save this. I'm going to save it in here as, so I'll say shaft design, no spaces allowed. You can use underscore, shaft design, right? I'll add torsion to it because there are other forces I haven't considered. This is just for torsion. Okay, so I'll save this. Now let me run it. Now when I run it, I have that. If I turn this to yes, okay, so once I run this, you will see that if I turn it to no, then that edit field goes away. If I turn it to yes, that edit field appears. So that is good. Okay, now let me turn it off. You see that the label K is still there. Okay, so why is the label K still there? Because this information or this code here, app.k.visible, it controls only the edit field but not the label. So if we want to control the label, then we have to turn the label also off in a separate code. So we have to go and look for the name of that label, and that is a little tricky. So let's go and do some search. Okay, so we created so that all these are stuff that we have created. So we created all right, we created the output, the test area, calculate, we created K. Okay, so if you look at this one right here, it says create label numeric edit field 3, and the test in that numeric okay, so we created K here, right? I'm scrolling down. We created K here, right? All right, and then if you look at the code just above this, we have label numeric edit field 3, and the test there is what is K. So this label numeric, this one right here, label numeric edit field 3, this is the name of or this is the label for that edit field that we are looking for, this one right here. So let me select, can I select that? Okay, so I can't select that, but then in properties too, you have all of them here, and then you see I have it here as well, right? So K, so this value here controls K. It is called label numeric edit field 3. So let's go and try. Control C to copy it, and then I would come here and say app.k. okay, app.control V to paste, and then I'll say .visible, and I'll set that to off, and then let me copy this entire thing, copy, and then here I'll set it to on. Okay, now let me save my, well, I wouldn't save, let me run, and then once I turn this to yes and back to no, the both of them disappear. Okay, all right, so let me close this, let me rerun it. Now you see that one issue we have is that when we run this, right, when we run it, we haven't clicked anything yet. The switch is turned to no, we don't want hollow shaft, but then the K is already what appearing, and we don't want that. So when this app starts, we don't want this K to be there. Whenever we start the app, this K shouldn't be there in the first place because the hollow shaft is turned to no. So how do we do that? Now there's a startup function. Whatever you put in this, so I have function startup up here. Whatever you put in here will happen or will be executed immediately you run your code. So when I run my code or when I start the app, okay, I want the switch to be off. Okay, I want the switch to be off. the switch to be off, and then I want its label to be off as well. Okay, so I want these two things to occur when I run the app. So let me run the app again. Okay, and now you see that when I run the app, the K is not visible. All right, now when I turn this one to yes, it appears, and I turn it to no, it goes away. So this is the functionality I want. Okay, so that is done for. Now we are almost through. So what we do next is we have to make some computations. We have to do some calculations. Okay, so for calculations, I will do the calculations with this button, calculate. So I'll click on calculate either here, or I'll click on calculate there, either one of the two. Okay, so I'll click on calculate, and then in the code browser, I would say I'll click on callback, and then I'll add a callback to the calculate button. So what do I need to do with the calculate? I have to compute the diameters. So for me to compute the diameters, first I have to take, let's say, I have to get my torque. Okay, and where do I get my torque from? I get my torque from app.torque. So I would say that app.torque, okay, app.torque, which is this one right here, or this one right here, that is my app.torque. So I would say app.torque dot value, I want its value. So app.torque dot value, right, will be my torque. And then what do I need to take? I need to take my tau, and the tau is given by this one right here, which is the shear. Okay, so app.shear. Okay, so I will say the tau is equal to app.shear dot value. So that is that. What else do I need to do? And then the K here, I'll call it K underscore ratio. So the K ratio will be big app dot big K dot value. So that is that. So I have all of these. Okay, now I have two conditions. So when I am doing a solid shaft, I will get D, which is the diameter. But if I have to do a hollow shaft, I will get D naught and DI. Okay, so I need to use an if statement. So I will say if the switch, okay, or if the switch is off. And how do I get that value? Okay, so I can use this same code here. So I can say if, let's compare, so string compare. So I am comparing the value, right? I am comparing the value of my switch to no. Okay, so if the switch is turned off, then what am I looking for? What that means is that I am doing a solid shaft. So for a solid shaft, I have already written down the formula on my PowerPoint presentation. So I'll just copy it. Okay, I'll just copy that and then paste it here. Okay, so this is what I want. Now here I am using an nth root. Nth root is is a function in MATLAB that you can use to compute the root to any degree of any figure. So say if I were to go to MATLAB, okay, so MATLAB like this, and I say nth root, okay, of 8, and I want its cubic root. So the second argument, this 3 is whatever. So if I wanted the square root, this will be 2, okay. So I want the cubic root of 8. So if I should run this, I get 2, okay. So I think that this is akin to saying 8 raised to the power 1 over 3, okay. All right, so you can either use this notation or that notation. Just to teach something new, I'm going to use the nth root here. All right, so back to this, okay. So if I compare the value, now value is in this function up here. In this calculate button pushed function, value hasn't been defined. So what I'll do is I'll just copy this, okay. I'll just copy this and then paste it here. If I don't paste it here, MATLAB wouldn't know what this value corresponds to. So now it knows that this value is the value of what? Of the switch. Okay, so if the switch is off, then I want to compute for this, because this will be a hollow shaft. Okay, if the switch is off or the value of the switch is known, then I want to compute for D, because D, the diameter that I'm looking for will be the diameter of a solid shaft, okay, not a hollow, a solid shaft. So once I have the diameter, now I can print my answer out. So I'll print my answer to output, okay. So what I'll have to do is app.output, okay, dot value. So now I'll set the value of this output, this text box. I will set its value to what? I'll set its value to D. All right. Now the issue is that this, you see, I've clicked on this app.output. If you look here, it says test, okay. So what it does is that it accepts only tests. All right. And this diameter that we have computed is not a test, okay. It's not a string, it is a number. So it means that MATLAB, or it means that this output box here, or this test area, cannot publish this figure, because it doesn't accept numbers, it doesn't accept floats, integers, or anything of that sort. So let's convert this to a string from a number. So we will use num to string. All right, num to string. All right, so num to string will convert this to what? To a string, and then the answer can be populated in output here for us. Okay, so now mind you, we are using this if statement. So we have said if the switch is off, that is if the value is no, then we have a solid shaft. But if its value is yes, then we have a hollow shaft. So for a hollow shaft, we have to compute the D naught, or the outside or the outer diameter. So for that, I have also written my formula here. I'll just copy it and then paste it there. All right, and then after getting my D naught, or the outer diameter, I have to find my the D in, or the inner diameter as well, and that one is given by the K ratio, or K, which is multiplied by what? The D naught, or the outer diameter. So this will give me that. And then in this situation too, I will still publish my answer to output. okay, to output. But in this case, I'll have 2 items. So because I have 2 items, I am going to put them in an array. Okay, I am going to put them in an array, or this is basically a vector. So I have a row vector here, so the d not, and then I'll leave some space, okay, and then di. So I can do this. Now in place of the space, I can say inner diameter. This is not the best approach to use. This is by no means the best way to do it, but then just for demonstration purposes, I'll just cut corners here. Okay, so this is what we have. I wonder if all of this will fit. If it doesn't fit, then we'll make some modifications. So now let's run this. Okay, and then let's do this for a solid shaft. So 10 and 10. Let's calculate. Okay, so we run into an error which says T is not defined. Okay, so in my formula I used T, but then when I was taking the figures, I used when I was taking the values, I used torque. So this rather has to be torque. That means that I have to modify this as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this again. So let me say 10, 20, calculate. All right, and now I have my answer. So this is for my D. Okay, now let me turn the hollow shaft on, and I want to design a hollow shaft. So 0.96, and then I'll say calculate. So you see that the information should be in there somewhere. They seem to be missing. Let me go back to the code, and then I'll change this to, let me just make this D not and leave a space, and for this let me just say D in, then leave some space. Now let me run it and see. Okay, now before I run that, like I did for, or like we have done for this, okay, we may have to convert this to a string as well. So num, because this is a num, I have to convert it to an str, and then num to str. Okay, so now let's go and run that. Okay, so 10, 50, 0.85, calculate. Okay, so now I have my answers. Let me do some formatting here. You put some space in between them. So this is by no means the best approach to use. We put a pipe there. So 10, 50, 96. Calculate. Okay, so this is what I'm looking for. All right, so basically that is it. Calculate. All right, so here you have it. This is the way to go about it. All right, so this is the way to go about it. That's simple, and we are done.